Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. I'm sitting here with Jonathan Cohen. Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm very well, Nick. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And a voice of the podcast of whom you haven't heard much of, but this is our good friend Stephen. Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Hello. I don't think anybody has ever heard me.
We have, because you were on Musical Talk once, and we were doing a kind of talk around the room, and you famously said, into my mind, "Hello, I'm Stephen Moore, and I know more about musicals than anyone else in this room," which got a big laugh.
Well, that's absolutely true.
And we are going to talk about the Chichester production of South Pacific. I'll be honest, I haven't seen this show. The last production I saw, South Pacific, was at the Barbican, which was a Broadway transfer, which was lovely. I'm not too keen on seeing it again, but I know you, especially Stephen, were very excited to see it. And it's your first musical since everything's shut, wasn't it, that you went to see?
Yes, it was. I booked it in February last year, so I've waited a long time for it.
And are you a fan of the film or the material?
I don't know it at all. Never seen the film. I don't really know much about musicals, contrary to what I falsely asserted earlier. But no,
But you are an opera fan, so
yes, I'm an opera.
It kind of, does it go into that world at all?
I up until about 20 years ago or less, I dismissed musicals as shallow pieces of frippery.
Yeah.
And what for me, what this shows is that it won the Pulitzer Prize for drama, and you can see why, because it works as drama. It has a serious message, and it's truthful in the emotional stories it tells and the way it deals with colonialism.
You'll be seeing Hamilton next, which also
no, that's it.
No, you'll love Hamilton. But if I may just, it's interesting because on the opera theme here. The actual part of Emile, sung by Julian Ovenden, it was originally written actually for an opera singer. So all his material is operatic, yeah. And in the film, Rosanna Brazzi plays the part of Emile, but it's dubbed by the opera singer.
Marnie Nixon.
In this case, it's not Marnie Nixon, it's also a male. But also, they clearly transposed the songs upwards because it was for a baritone, and Julian Ovenden is more a tenor, really. And he's not really an opera singer, but he's studied operatically, voice training, vocally, and
he bangs out the top notes.
Well, he's got incredible technique. It's just a very, very interesting. I mean, I think he sings it absolutely beautifully, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So does she, Gina Beck.
She's Nelly. Wonderful. Yeah.
Wonderful performance.
Pregnant or not?
Yes, very heavily pregnant.
She had some Enchanted evening one time, didn't she?
So I could imagine them in costume expanding the dresses to accommodate her. I think she's finished now. Where are we now? What day?
Yes, I think because you saw it a couple of days after I did, and I think she was only doing. You saw it on a Saturday. I think she was doing up to that Saturday, and then she was gradually being eased out by somebody else. I'm not sure who it was, but she was absolutely wonderful. She acted it so beautifully too.
Yeah, so much energy, and it's a fantastic production.
Yeah, it is.
Because of the way it's staged, because the way it addresses the issues that are raised.
We should say, Stephen, you are a TV director. You've done sort of... Retired, but you have done things I've heard of, like Grange Hill and Beit O Grove.
Beit O Grove and Coronation Street,
EastEnders and...
Emmerdale Farm.
And
that's enough.
Was it Emmerdale Farm or Emmerdale?
It was Emmerdale when I did it. Yes. But that's not...
General Hospital and things. And
all of that, yeah.
So what was it about this production that worked for you?
Because it just... the way it addressed certain issues of race and colonialism like Bloody Mary and Happy Talk. It was a completely different reading, wasn't it, Jonathan?
Well, it was orchestrated in a much more sombre way, because normally it's happy, talking, da-da-da. This, they made it really quite heavy.
Well, it's more like a lament.
Yeah, it was like a lament.
For the bogusness of the American dream.
And I do wonder if they had to go to the Rodgers and Hammerstein's estate to get permission for it, because it was so different. I mean, it's still the same song, but it really worked, didn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
I mean, at the end, she's almost crying because she realises that the happy talk is actually illusory. It's just a pretense.
Yeah.
And that, he's not going to go with her because it's too big a risk.
Yeah.
A white American going with a Tonkinese girl.
And it's interesting because you've got Carousel also playing at the Regent's Park Theatre, and that's been set in Northern England for some reason in the modern day. And it just seems that are they doing this for the sake of doing it, or does the changes made in the South Pacific, it really worked for you too?
There weren't that many changes.
No, okay.
It was just that song was just given a different sort of slant to it,
Yes.
really. And also, they started it differently, because normally you would just start with da-da-da, the belly high bit, but it actually started with Leah, to the Tonkinese girl, sitting there, didn't it?
Yes, dancing. And then the lieutenant comes on and joins her. And at that stage, you don't know who he is.
That's right.
Well, I didn't, because I didn't know the musical.
No. And then you get into the big normal overture. What's interesting about the music is that David Cullen has reorchestrated it for obviously much smaller forces. Yeah. I have to say, I did miss the big orchestrations of it, but obviously you couldn't do it down there. But actually, he did it beautifully, and it did work. Yeah. I think some of the underscoring might have been changed slightly. I'm not sure. I've never seen the show before. Obviously, I've seen the film, but the film was changed a lot from the original show. But it was a very daring show to do in 1949, I think it was.
Yes, that's when it was staged on Broadway. And it got heavily, well, not heavily, but there was a lot of pressure to remove the Lieutenant song.
Oh, yes. You've got to be carefully taught. That one, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, and they were told, they were advised, don't keep that in, and blah, blah, blah. And Hammerstein said, no, it stays. And of course, it was like iconic partly because of that. Very, very brave of them, I thought.
You mentioned Gina Ovenden and Gina Beck. Which other performers stood out to you, Steve?
Well, that's the great thing, of course. Their performances, they're the stars, and the lieutenant, whose name I can't remember, the actor, is superb as well. And they're all good. It's very much an ensemble piece. Ensemble is an overused word, It's like more than 4 people come on stage. It's an ensemble piece. Well, it isn't actually.
It's always funny in musicals when you get a solo, someone's doing a speech or something, and then about 28 other people suddenly walk on the stage, and then, there's going to be a song now because the chorus are here. I always think that's kind of bad direction when they do that. Because I remember I was in a school production of Grease, and suddenly about 20 seconds before Summer Night started, there were suddenly 70 students on stage all ready to kind of sway along.
But in Greece, you could almost get away with it. I think in South Pacific, it's such a serious
Greece is serious. What are you saying?
But of course, going back to what I said earlier and what we've discussed before, is the thing of why is it that opera lends itself to a multiplicity of different stagings, different readings, interpretations, and musicals don't.
They are starting to now, and we're seeing that.
Especially, well, you're limited by the estates, aren't you, who kind of say this is how it's staged.
I think we're starting to see it a lot more, especially with Rodgers and Hammerstein talking about Carousel. I don't think years ago they'd have allowed that to be set in the north of England, the north of England.
No, well, they wouldn't, would they? Because the estate wouldn't allow it.
And now they are, obviously, and obviously South Pacific isn't drastically changed. But I think some of the issues people have with the Rodgers and Hammerstein shows is that they are seen as a bit kind of questionable nowadays.
Yes.
But you see, I can't see. That's what I feel. If it's a period piece, then you see it as a period piece.
Yes,
that's how it was.
Yes,
it's history. You can't.
Jonathan, you know him as well. Somebody we know, a friend of ours, really got uptight about it all, saying it's racist, it's colonialist, and if they're going to get a stage it needs to be rewritten, which is absolute rubbish.
True.
And if he has a problem with her, he says. What is it? He says a Tongolese girl or something, And Nellie, changes the language and says, no, it's a coloured.
That's right,
woman.
she does.
So it's that he said that shouldn't be allowed. That should be rewritten because it's offensive.
But it's the era, isn't it?
Well, it wasn't. It's historically correct language, and it is appalling. And they take a big risk because, not knowing the show, I thought, I don't like you anymore.
So it obviously worked for it.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing is, I know that the lieutenant you're talking about is Cable.
That's right.
And he sang beautifully.
Yeah,
I wish I could remember
tremendous.
his name. He's well known. He's been in a couple of things. Rosie Ash, a friend of ours, the singer Rosemary Ash, knows this guy. She's worked with him. Oh.
While Jonathan racks his brains, what was the design like?
It was very good, except that I went to Matinee with all the old people.
Okay.
So did I.
Yes, it took an awful long time to fill up the auditorium. I include myself in that.
So the matinee and the evening shows blended at some point.
We probably all met, actually, in the foyer crossing. What did you ask me?
What was the design? Last year, was it?
Oh, yeah.
Simple?
Well, funny enough, at the performance I went to, the matinee on a Saturday afternoon, the mechanical platform broke down.
Oh.
So the stage manager came on and said, we're really sorry, we've got a technical problem. If you just stay in your seats, which was, given the age of the audience, a good thing. And eventually he came back and said, we haven't been able to fix it, but the stage crew will operate it manually. So you have them coming on, moving it, and then plopping down sandbags to secure
Was
the
that
platform.
distracting, do you think, for your first? Was that distracting?
No, it was. It added to it, because that's the great thing about live events, isn't it?
Was this a Jonathan Church production?
No. What, this one?
Yeah.
At Chichester. No, it's by Daniel Evans. It's the second. I saw Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes, that was wonderful.
And again,
as well.
tremendous. He's obviously a very, very gifted director of musical theatres. And the production was tremendous. It did what it said on the packet. It very cleverly told the story. It was escapist, but he staged it in a way that addressed the big issues. So that we can't talk about the end, can we, in case people haven't...
I think it's old enough that people probably know it.
No, I mean the staging.
Okay, well, was it a highlight for you?
Okay,
I know this,
if you haven't seen it and you want to go and see it, cover your ears now. What's the girl called? It's Leah. Right at the end, when the happy family disappear, Nellie and whatever his name is, Emile, disappear with the two children.
Sound of Music style.
On comes Leah, and she repeats the choreography with which it opened, this time alone. And it becomes more almost celebratory. And it ends with her doing this wonderful leap into the air, blackout. So our last image of her is asserting an independence and a self-identity and joy outside of the narrative, in a way, because the narrative kind of goes because she's left, doesn't she? I mean,
she's left when Cable dies.
Yeah, Cable dies. But here, so that's what I mean earlier when I said about interpretative skill.
Yeah.
That is a brilliant way of ending the musical.
And actually,
it was joyous.
I don't think Musical Talk's ever had such long words in a review of anything.
But the thing about Leah is that, of course, in the actual show, the original show, I think she barely says anything.
You've had Robert on. What you're on about?
I don't think she says anything. Leah does in the actual show.
No, she doesn't speak French.
And so this gives her a way of having a voice,
yes,
which she actually doesn't, because she's considered very much the sort of daughter of Bloody Mary, who's the one who talks all the time, the mother. But actually, there's something very touching about that too.
Yes, I mean, apparently in the original staging, and I guess it's in the stage directions, when a Bloody Mary sings Happy Talk, the daughter mimes actions to it.
Yes, they do. Yes, exactly.
Which wasn't in this. She just.
But which is fine. I mean, they could have done it, and it still would have worked. But this was much more powerful, I thought.
But I think, as Nick said, as you said about restaging stuff. I mean, Carousel, I think is not, for me it isn't, because I think they challenged audiences to think about truths and issues. And in Carousel, you have the whole thing about a man who's beats women.
Yeah.
A very nasty piece of work, and why does she stay with him? And it's up to the production to address that, not, as that friend of ours said, rewrite it or don't stage it. Find a way of interpreting it that is truthful to that historical period, that a Southern girl... And also, she learns. By the end, you know, when she thinks that he's dead, she realises how stupid she is, that her Southern upbringing and prejudice has stopped her loving the quote-unquote the wonderful man in my life.
It shows, I mean, we talked about this, or we'll talk about it, I don't know when it's going to be released, but our episode about Schmigadoon, we talk about the kind of longevity that these Rodgers and Hammerstein or Rodgers and Hart or what musicals have, and the fact that, 70 years on, they're still being revived and redone and re-looked at and redone for
one of the reasons, of course, is that the songs are sort of perennial, aren't they?
And there's so many wonderful. Kind of, when I saw South Pacific, I went in thinking, I'm not going to know any of these songs, and you leave
knowing most of them.
Think, I knew about 8 of these songs.
Yeah. I mean, something like This Nearly Was Mine that Julian Ovenden sings, that Emile sings, is absolutely wonderful. And of course it soars, and that, it's very rangy because it was written for an opera singer, basically. And Julian Ovenden sings...
And the tunes just keep coming.
I know.
They don't stop in the first half. It's like...
Oh, it's amazing.
Melody
the
after
second
melody.
half was always considered the weaker of the two halves.
Which was?
The second half.
Yes, because you get into the war plot, don't
exactly.
you?
But it's quite exciting because you get this. But I think
they've staged that brilliantly. Yeah, I think with the aircraft in the background.
They have a real aircraft on the stage, don't they?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Just the technicality of bringing all those people onto the stage, because a lot of them have very brief little scenes and amazing stagecraft.
My only memory of Chichester is a tent.
Oh God!
When I saw Barnum.
Oh, I don't think I was born then, was I?
No, Barnum was done in a tent, I think. No, this is the actual Festival Theatre, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's been there since...
Oh, then maybe they built a tent inside the...
I think I saw Gypsy in the real theatre.
Yes, you will have done.
But yes, so it sounds, obviously massive. What's the orchestra? You said the orchestra was reduced.
It was. I mean, there was a cello and a violin and possibly a viola, but there were about 3 strings. There was a lot of brass. Very good rhythm section. I mean, wonderful playing. But I just missed some of the original stuff. But David Cullen did a brilliant job, and the original orchestrator, who is
Richard Russell Bennett, whatever his name is.
Yes. Russell Bennett. He does say original orchestrations. Yeah. It does say. But I was thinking back to. Can't remember what I was going to say.
But you were going with that because I'm not a musician, obviously, and I found it was noisy and powerful, the orchestra. But it was certainly bigger, wasn't it, or a bigger sound than Gypsy that you saw. Because I remember you said that was...
Well, Gypsy didn't have any strings in it, and that really...
Ironically has a line, the strings...
Which has a line, strings come in, and there aren't any.
Yeah.
It was probably about the same...
problem.
I mean, there are keyboards in there. There always are, filling in a lot of stuff, but there was some wonderful... a lot of use of harp. Did you notice?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
I remember reading that and saying it's so rare to have a show with a harp in the orchestra, not just a keyboard pad, so it was nice to have a real harp.
But I mean, there was a keyboard pad, but you mean the harp was real?
Well, as in Devotee Bel Canto Opera, you have plenty of harps in that.
Yeah, but sadly, we don't have the musicals, as we know, don't have the kind of...
They have great tunes.
So they don't have the budgets, do they?
No.
I mean, I would love to, but I mean, it would be great to put South Pacific on at E&O, wouldn't it? I mean, it'd be a wonderful thing to put on.
We had the national production in 2000 and something.
Yes.
Of course, we orchestrated by Bill Brown.
Oh yeah,
and it was Trevor Nunn.
Yes.
But that was really long. Someone said Trevor Nunn made it even longer than it is because it's pretty long. But I know what I was going to say. The second act, I think they've managed to
compress it
slightly. Yes. I think, and it does have lots of reprises at the end, which of course for years in musicals they haven't for a long time now they don't do reprises.
Yes.
But I didn't mind that. Did you? I mean, it sort of
Well, it flows. And
Yeah.
again, that's partly presumably the work of the musical director
Yeah.
and arranger and the director and designer. And
What was
choreographer.
interesting-
It moves very,
Yeah.
very quickly.
Yeah.
It's very very
But the
pepsy.
person playing Bloody Mary, who's usually Polynesian, isn't she? I mean, because she's from the islands and all that, is actually, she's from somewhere like... is she Vietnamese? I can't remember. She's from somewhere
She's got a
like...
great voice.
Yeah, she was fabulous.
Fabulous.
And Ballet High is such an... I mean, you know,
Yes.
we know it's been played
Does it,
to
have
death.
does it have a dream ballet high?
It doesn't have a... South Pacific didn't have a dream ballet. They decided not
axed
to
it,
put
didn't
one
they?
in. They just decided not to
Right.
write one in because they felt the subject matter, you know, they couldn't quite see a way of doing it.
Yes.
The issue one could say with Rodgers and Hammerstein is that, and I will prove this issue by asking, any laughs?
Yes.
Loads.
Oh, loads.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to wash that hair. There ain't nothing
That
like
man-
it.
that man
Yeah,
out
that
of my
man.
Hair right out of my man.
Yeah, the shampoo advert. And the Ain't Nothing Like a Dame. And there's some great comedy
There
business.
is nothing like a day.
Yes.
I thought it was there ain't nothing like a dame. I thought it was ain't.
There is
Like
nothing
a
like a
dame.
dame. There is nothing you can name that is anything like a dame.
Okay. Right.
That was very well done
Yeah,
as well, because
yeah.
it was very realistic the way
Yes,
they did it,
yes.
I thought.
The whole thing is...
It's
It seems they've taken a naturalistic approach to the piece, but yet you have this kind of lovely wrapping it in this kind of gymnastic moment, which
Yeah.
you said opened and closed
Yeah.
the show, which
Yes.
It was lovely.
kind of grounded it in the theatrical.
Actually, do you know what? The more I think about it, the more I'd love to go and see it again.
Yes, I came out of the theatre eventually, and I thought I really could crawl back in now and see
you
the
probably
evening.
did. You would have seen the evening show.
I would happily have seen the evening.
What was so lovely?
But Chichester's so lovely because it's always nice to, you know, we're lucky to live in London, so it's always nice to go to a theatre that's a destination.
Yeah.
And you can kind of make a day out of it. You can have a lunch somewhere or dinner somewhere new, not the kind of, in Covent Garden again, in, you know, so...
No, that is true. That is true. And also, they're so appreciative down in Chichester. They're so thrilled to have stuff there. The other thing was that I just remember thinking I was totally wrapped in it.
Yeah.
Did you feel that?
Yes, a bit. Well, because of partly that's the thrust staging, isn't it?
I was
Yeah.
going to say, is it pros arch or thrust? Or
No,
It's
thrust.
It's thrust staging, but it's just wonderful because you come out humming tunes, you come out feeling upbeat, but you didn't hang your brains up in the cloakroom before the show. It actually challenges you to think.
I agree.
It shows you what you should think in an absolutely delightful way. This was from Kenneth Tynan's review of the original production when it came to the West End in The Spectator. What he was writing for The Spectator for, I don't know. Anyway, he said, the first musical romance which was seriously involved in an adult subject.
Okay.
And that's so it's
That's kind of what Rodgers and Hammerstein did, though.
Yes,
And
it
how-
is.
It's actually not true. Well, I suppose because it was so near the end of the war anyway, it became like that. But if you think Oklahoma was about, a lot of that was about
Oh, yes.
the becoming a state, one of the states of the United States, wasn't it?
Showboat adults as well.
Showboat certainly before that, and of course Carousel was very much based.
So
on
where in the canon is South Pacific when it comes to their...
third, I think.
Right.
Oh no, there's one before. I know what it was. There was one before. Which one? What it was? Other people will know. Was it something like? Not Do I Hear a Waltz? There was something else.
They're probably all shouting.
And the third one,
Allegro.
it might have been Allegro. It wasn't.
No, that's later, isn't it?
It wasn't a hit.
Because that's supposed to be a turkey.
But this one wasn't a hit, although it ran enough for it to make a profit, but it wasn't really a hit. They were desperate to get another hit, and that was when someone suggested these Tales of the South Pacific.
The James Michener, which also won a Pulitzer Prize.
It did, which they just sort of pulled bits of it and sort of stuck bits together, didn't they?
And it's funny how... it's not funny, it's very true that all the Rodgers and Hammerstein stories, and again we talk about this with Schmigadoon, they are about American people coming over to a foreign land or a different culture and kind of
Oh, you mean like
putting
The King and I?
putting the American values into these communities, which just works, doesn't it? Because it's so wholesome and it's so kind of
except it critiques it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think it is particularly wholesome. I think it's very easy to say, "Oh God, Rodgers and Hammerstein's." It's twee and this, that, the other. Not a bit.
No, this isn't at all twee. That's what I found quite, because I didn't know Rodgers and Hammerstein. I'd never seen.
And the other thing is,
it's actually very hard hitting.
We watched The Sound of Music live the other week?
Oh yes,
that was great.
That was great. I kept looking at the shots.
But what you do get,
camera work.
What you do find in this is that you're taken into so many different emotions, aren't you? You know, one minute you're laughing, one minute you're thrilled, the other minute you're crying. It's a real sort of mishmash.
Well, I
of
remember
emotions.
this proves the power of the production. You said you both cried.
Yeah.
Well, I cried as soon as the music started, of course, because I know the music.
Yeah.
And when you get that amazing da da da, and you get that chord against it, that it is. It
sums the whole thing up, probably.
Yeah, but it's not sweet. It's like, there's something weird
sums
going
the whole
on
thing
here.
up.
Yeah, it does.
Oh yeah, and here the emphasis is. I mean, that's incredibly touching with Lieutenant Cable when he sings that song. I mean, it's like heartbreaking. You think, oh God, I hope she learns her lesson. I even cried at that when she went, "A coloured woman."
I can't remember which song that is. Which song is it? He sings that song absolutely beautifully.
Yes.
That's the most famous song.
Yes.
Younger Than Springtime.
Yes. Oh gosh. That is wonderful. And of course, they kill him off. Well, I don't know. Maybe he's dead in one of the stories because he is in the.
I think he probably is.
But of course, what you think, could it have worked? Could he have married her? Because you have the example of the Frenchman who. But then I suppose it's rather different.
Well, I mean, they're both. It's both about racial stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because him and the girl, and he doesn't want to marry her. He daren't marry her.
Yeah.
And of course, Bloody Mary gets absolutely furious with him, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Because also, she would have been able to get her daughter married off to someone with money.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she says at one point, she doesn't quite say it in these terms, but it's what she's been aiming for.
Yeah.
It's what it's all been about.
Yeah, to marry her off to somebody. Yeah.
So you made some notes, Stephen. Anything else there that you want to bring up before we bring this lovely conversation to
No, I hope it comes to the West End.
Yeah.
Is there talk of a transfer?
I haven't heard anything, but usually the Chichesters always had a kind of string of success when it comes to transferring things, but who knows in this climate?
It would be so lovely to have South Pacific in the West End, that production.
But people say that, don't they? It's like friends of mine who work in theatre have said, "Oh, nobody's coming to see theatre," that's not that. They're not going to see the kind of political dirges and minority interests they at this point in time. That has a role, but at this point in time, you want.
So we said things like Hairspray and
but also it's like the Depression when everybody wanted jolly stuff, didn't they?
Yeah.
But I was thinking the film, the big blockbuster film, the Todd-A-O in Glorious Todd-A-O. In the film, they cut a lot of "I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair," and crucially, when it was shown in the 50s, when it was first came out in 59, I think it was. They cut "You've Got to Be Carefully Taught."
Oh, yes.
But it was recorded in the film, and I think it was on the soundtrack. But of course, if you watch it now, it was on television the other day, and it's all back in.
Yeah.
But why did they cut it in 1959?
Oh, yeah. Well, why did they... And when people, the previews, or the out-of-town previews... A lot of people said to Hammerstein and Rodgers, "You've got to cut that."
Yeah.
And at one point, apparently, Rodgers just laughed.
Yeah.
He said, "No."
And Hammerstein certainly said, "No, absolutely not. We pull the show if that's."
By the way, did you know? I only discovered this afternoon that the director gets a writing credit, and also he got a share of the profits.
He did, because
Hammerstein didn't know about the army.
Exactly, and he knew
he had served in the war,
that's
so
right.
he knew.
But he got very upset because they didn't they either didn't credit him or they didn't
That's
give
right.
him any money. I think they
That's
credited him,
right.
didn't. But when the film came out,
He got 50%.
no, not 50%.
was
He got
a
a bit
lot.
of a percent. So I mean, they said he needn't have worried about it because he made an absolute fortune out of the film.
Yeah.
It's so interesting all that. It's a bit like in West Side Story that Marnie Nixon, who dubbed Natalie Wood, she only got a session fee, and Bernstein gave her a bit of his royalty. Wasn't that a nice thing to do for the composer to give, somebody like that? Anyway,
Quite rightly so.
but I mean, these things do happen.
Well, I feel like I've been very carefully taught about South Pacific, and
Go and see it.
But question, you may have been carefully taught. Have
Yeah.
you learnt anything from
I have,
it,
yes.
Nicholas?
I've learnt that the director got writing credit,
Very good.
and I've learnt that you two really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Go
Yeah.
and see it.
That-
Fantastic.
Is it still on?
Yes, I think it runs for another week.
okay. Well, by the time this airs, it won't be on. So hopefully,
So fingers crossed for a
hopefully,
transfer.
fingers crossed for a
But it's
transfer or
certainly-
a film or something.
Yeah.
Or,
No, not film. Theatre is a unique experience.
I think yes, because having, as I say, never seen the actual show, you realise how much better than the film.
Yeah. Get off your
Could possibly
backsides and
be.
go and see it. Don't lie around being couch potatoes waiting for a film version.
No, I'd love to see it again.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Jonathan.
It's a pleasure,
Pleasure.
Nicholas.
Speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Musical Talk. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk, you can visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk, where you'll find all our episodes, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Musical Talk.